Hey, Cordova Naz, I'm up here in the youth room, um, and I just been thinking a little bit about the text today. Our gospel text is from Mark 9, um, and Jesus starts saying, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it'd be better for them if a large millstone were hung around their neck, and they were thrown into the sea." If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell, where the fire never goes out. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life crippled than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. Um, and he goes on a little bit more there, finishing with salt is good, but if salt loses its saltiness, how can you make it salty again? Have salt among yourselves and be at peace with each other. Um, you know, one of the primary things that we're meant to be thinking about these days is what we're communicating, and to be sure that we're not communicating disease, to be sure that we're not communicating virus. Um, but I wonder how careful we are about being sure that we're communicating something positive and not just removing those things that are negative. How much do we sort of take this call to be careful about what we communicate, to be careful about what gets passed on between um, between us as a directive to really filter and take care with our relationships um, and the messages that come off. Jesus is pretty clear here about the fact that we're going to be judged, assessed, discerned um, on how our communication affects, especially those who are weaker among us. Um, Anyone who causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble. And so I wonder if we might take a moment to carefully think about the ways that we interact with each other. Are we are we being careful about um, being sure that what we say is heard in the right spirit? Now, we can't be in charge of all of that. We can't be entirely in charge of how other people receive. But have we done our part? I mean, have I done my part to make sure that what others hear from me is what I want them to hear, and that um, if they're going to misunderstand me, then I'm really really sure that they're trying to misunderstand me. If they're going to take what I do, what I say, um, negatively or in a way that's going to be destructive to them, then I'm really really sure that that is on them and not on me. And so much of what we do in the Christian life is about self control. It's about limiting ourselves and not taking our freedom to its furthest extent, not taking our rights to the the extent that we could, where we actually let ourselves be limited. We do less um, than than we maybe have a right to do. But the purpose of that is for the good of the other. I mean, and that's where all of this is taking us. We're about to dig this week into the passion of Jesus Christ, into the story of his last week with his disciples, his last week on earth. Um, and Jesus is the prime example of this. Somebody who lets himself be limited, who our epistle text, our New Testament reading, this text is from Philippians 2, who gives up everything, who gives up life at the right hand of the Father in order to be made a man, in order to be made a human, in order to descend all the way down to depth, to become obedient to death, even death on a cross, which is something that there was no good reason that he needed to be obedient to, and yet he did for the good of others. And Jesus starts all of that by saying, I wish that you would have, or have therefore, the same mind that was in Christ Jesus. That's not just something for Jesus because he's God and he can do that special divine thing. No, that's something actually for all of us. that if we're going to be in Christ, if we're going to be little Christs, if we are going to be Christians, then it's up to us to take on this life of limiting ourselves. So my prayer is that in this quarantine that you're learning a little bit of that. You're learning what it is to limit yourself for the sake of another one who is weak. That you're learning what it is to say, no, I'm not going to take my rights all the way out as far as I could. Why? Because it would negatively impact somebody else who is small, who is in need. I only say small because Jesus calls us here those little ones. But let's think about one another in our actions, in our words, in the ways even that we present ourselves to the world, and not be those who cause others to stumble. Take good care. I hope to see you soon. God bless.